So our project today is about wetlands. And what do you think a wetland is?
Wetland?
I'm sure I don't know. I'm asking you to tell me.
Like a swamp or a marsh.
This is the first time I hear about it.
Wetlands,
Marshes, ponds,
lakes and bogs.
any place where you get waterfalls.
The lower areas where water collects from rainwater, snow melt.
Ducks and
Probably an environment where there's lots of water and wildlife around that water.
living and geese. And
A wetland is where there are species of animals.
somewhere in outside the city where you have a mixture of water and land.
Going out to the country, having a good time with some friends, camping, that kind of thing.
Wetlands are loosely defined as areas that have standing water for a period of time, several weeks or more, ranging from very temporary to very permanent, and everything in between.
You know how much of Alberta is covered in wetlands?
Nope.
I would have no idea.
No idea.
I don't know.
4%, 5%.
No, probably like 30% or something.
10%?
Actually higher. It's actually 20% of Alberta's. Yeah.
Do you know how many species depend on the wetlands?
A lot, probably.
Probably hundreds.
Wild guess, I'd say 500.
Thousands?
No, I can't say, but I should think that a lot of species of animals will depend on wetlands.
Oh, there must be quite a few. I wouldn't guess. I'm afraid there are too many.
There are many species that are completely dependent on wetlands in some parts of their life cycle. That's why they're important for a lot of animals and plants, and that they cannot exist without them. They are certainly one of the most productive ecosystems on the planet. And this is because they have lots of nutrients, they have lots of light, access to light, they're often warm, and so you get very high production. I actually sit on a committee that looks at it, that does the status of of endangered species in Alberta, and ones that actually have conservation status in Alberta there's probably roughly, I would guess, maybe about 15, but these are the ones that are truly legally protected. In terms of things that are viewed as of conservation concern in Alberta, there are probably much more in neighborhood of wetland related species, probably more like 50, I would guess.
In Alberta, what percentage of marsh wetlands have declined in settled areas? What do you think the number is?
20%.
I can't really answer that. I'm not quite sure.
The most important issue for wetlands right now in Alberta is continued loss of wetlands. We have, for about the last 50 or 60 years, seen about a 0.3% loss rate per year across the province, which doesn't sound like a big number, but expressed as acres, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of acres lost, or significant percentages.
What is the most important current issue right now in wetlands conservation in Alberta?
In Alberta, it would be destruction is still a big problem, and also there's degradation. That can mean that it doesn't hold water as long as it used to. It can also mean changes in the plant community because they have invasive species. It can mean things like change in water quality. Destruction and degradation are still the biggest problems, and have been for the last 100 years.
Do you know what wetlands actually do for you as a person?
I can't say as I do.
I guess they help the ecosystem with whatever it's doing. I'm not too knowledgeable on these things, but
It helps me to have wildlife around, and I know that hunters like having wildlife around, but...
What do you think the importance of wetlands is to you?
The importance, well, of course, we need wetlands to sustain the environment.
I would believe it would give us better drinking water, cleaner drinking water.
I think it's just nice to have that wildlife in the community.
I mean, if we don't have a good ecosystem, I mean, this will probably just dry up into a desert or something, right?
Exactly. Another reason why wetlands are important, and I think various wetland conservation organizations are emphasizing this more, is they do what are called ecosystem services on the landscape. And in particular, this is in terms of water quality issues. Wetlands are often a site for purification of water sources. Basically think of a sewage lagoon at a sewage treatment plant. These are places where various contaminants can fall out. They are also places where various conversions can be taken from raw materials into living organisms, etc. So water quality issues are very much tied into wetlands. And being involved with the groundwater systems and interplay with the groundwater table. So a lot of the primary production, that is carbon dioxide that's been captured from the atmosphere and put into plant tissue, does not break down, and it's trapped in the sediments in the peat, so it doesn't go back up into the atmosphere. There's concern with things like burning of peat or destruction of peatlands, of releasing all, again, that carbon that's been trapped there for thousands of years in many cases into the atmosphere.
How much of Alberta wetlands do you think have disappeared since the late 1800s?
I'd say 50%.
That wetlands, especially here in Alberta, are very important sites for biodiversity of plants and animals.
I think the cost of the loss of wetlands was in 2003.
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
No, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
$50 million.
Maybe 10,000.
40, 50 million.
It's actually $7.7 billion.
Wow. That's a lot. That's quite a bit.
Yeah. Yes.
7.7 billion. That's nuts.
What any person can do for wetlands is firstly to become aware of the issue. There's a lot of issues competing for our time and interest.
If you own any land or know people who own land, either residential acreages or farmlands, encourage them not to destroy wetlands, because wetlands can be destroyed in a variety of ways. Another thing I would say locally here would be to try and stop urban sprawl, because of course the areas at the edges of the city where construction is taking place for new housing developments, they have wetlands in them. Those wetlands will be altered or destroyed when housing goes in there. In terms of other ways of less sort of lifestyle choices, and that one that you could help directly would be to get involved with conservation organizations like the Nature Conservancy. Ducks Unlimited now is a conservation organization. There's the Alberta Federation of Naturalists. There's the Alberta Native Plant Council. Anyone can become members or contribute to those organizations. Personally, I've been involved in a number of projects that have been funded by Ducks Unlimited. And I'd say, for example, one of the most direct ones that I was involved in, I looked at the efficiency of one of Ducks Unlimited's big programs on actually restoring wetlands that had been drained. And we actually found that in Alberta, simply just getting a backhoe, plugging a little ditch, was all that was really required to restore these wetlands that had probably been drained for at least 10 to 20 years, had held no water.
Final question is, now that you know more about wetlands, the Alberta government is coming out with an Alberta wetland policy this year. Is this something you would want to know about and would support?
Sure, yeah.
Well, I support it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Definitely want to know about it. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
I think I would. Yes, definitely. Yes.
Oh yes, very, very much so. I would support it.
There was a policy being developed, but what was it about?
Because our system here it's actually more fragile than a lot of people realize. And once that's gone, we're pretty much had it.
I think that to have a sustainable environment, that would need the wetlands.
Anything you would like to say about wetlands to finish?
Save our wetlands.
Great, thank you.
What are we looking at here, Ken? This is the Ferguson Lake project just north of